I'm Laura Jacob, registered dietitian from Christie Clinic, and I'm here at Common Ground Food Co-op classroom, and I'm talking about winter squash today. Winter squash comes in a lot of varieties. As you can see here, there's more varieties than this, but it's really tasty. The reason that they call it winter squash is because it's harvested late summer, early fall into the fall, later fall, and most of them have a thicker skin than summer squash. So summer squash is like yellow squash and zucchini, and you cook them and the skin gets very soft. You can eat the skin easily and it's delicious and you don't have to peel them at all. But winter squash, a lot of the skins are tough and you don't want to actually eat the skin. So here we have butternut squash. We have a delicata squash, which actually for a winter squash does have a softer skin that you can eat. This is a buttercup squash, kaboka squash, blue Hubbard. There's a lot of other different varieties as well. Pumpkin is a squash as well, a winter squash as well. So you don't really want to eat the jack-o'-lantern sized pumpkin, but they do make little small sugar pumpkins that can be roasted or made into pie and things like that. So some of the nutritional benefits is most of them, in fact, they're all high in vitamin A, vitamin C, fiber, low in calories until you add butter and brown sugar and things like that. That does up the calories a little bit. But lots of good nutrition, antioxidants and things like that. When you're choosing a squash, a winter squash, you want to pick one that feels kind of heavy for its size. So that means there's good moisture inside. You want to, for storing them, you can store the ones with the tougher skins, not the delicata as long, but at room temperature for about a month. Or if you have someplace else, you can keep them around 50 degrees or so in a dry place. They will last several months. Just don't wash them first, just leave them as they are, leave the stem, and they'll last longer that way. Ways that you can prepare them: you can roast, steam, boil. You can cut them open and stuff them with something and bake them that way. You can add them to soups. You can actually make pie out of most of them, just like you would pumpkin, which is kind of nice. Butternut squash, actually, when you roast it, it gets very, very smooth, and you can puree it into a nice soup. So it's a really good one that way as well. When you go to prepare them, you want to brush off any soil that might have gotten on there. They do sit down on the earth, so they might pick up a bit of soil. So brush that off and then wash them. And you can peel them and cut them up and roast them, or you can just, actually the easiest way is to just, like the buttercup squash, you could just cut off the stem and cut it in half, roast it, put a little oil and maybe some herbs, salt, pepper, rosemary, something like that, and roast it until it's tender. A lot of people put butter and brown sugar and things like that too. And then you actually don't have to peel it, then you could just kind of eat it out of the skin, which makes it kind of nice and easier cleanup as well. Butternut squash is fairly challenging to peel. It's pretty hard, but you can, if you're going to peel it, you can cut a few slits in the skin and put it in the microwave for 3 or 4 minutes, and that softens it up, makes it a little bit easier to peel. So this one I'm actually not going to peel. I'm going to make roasted butternut squash. And so you just wash it. This one's been washed. Cut off the 2 ends. Takes a little bit of muscle. And cut off the stem end. I don't want to waste that much of it. And then I'm going to cut it lengthwise. This is going to be a little harder. Try to get a nice even half, 2 even halves. I actually, often when I have butternut squash, I will just take off the stem and roast the whole thing, and then when it's done, it's really easy to cut, and then I scoop out the seeds. So then you just scoop out the seeds, and it's kind of stringy stuff. It's a little slimy in there, but solid throughout here. It's very mild tasting, kind of on the sweet side. Scoop out the rest of the seeds. Yeah, that looks pretty good there. And then I'm gonna get a pan, and I'm gonna drizzle it with olive oil, put a little salt and pepper. You can do them face down, you can do them flesh side down or up. If you have oil on them, I think that up is fine. If you're not gonna put any oil, then I would put them down so they don't get dried out. So I'm just gonna drizzle some olive oil. Some people would do melted butter. I like to limit my saturated fat intake, and olive oil tastes very good, so it's still high in calories. There's a little bit of salt, not too much salt. Some cracked black pepper. And you can use fresh herbs if you like. You could maybe use some sage, minced up sage, or thyme. You could just kind of pull off some of the thyme leaves and sprinkle them on there. Or some fresh rosemary. If you have fresh herbs, if you don't have fresh herbs, use the dried herbs. They're great and handy, and they don't go bad. There's also some dried rosemary here as well. It's nice to have those dried herbs available, so you don't have to always rush out to the store because you forgot that one last thing, which happens to me a lot. So then you're just gonna roast them in a preheated 400 degree oven, 40 to 50 minutes, or until it's fork tender. So our roasted butternut squash is all done and fork tender and kind of caramelized looking. And so you might, as a side dish, you could probably serve 4 people with this, probably about cut in half. That's a good amount for a side dish. Or you could eat it for your main dish. That would be good as well. You can also use your extra and puree it and put it into a soup, or just cube it up and put it into a soup, or just reheat it again the next day and eat it. I always like leftovers. So that's roasted butternut squash, and I hope you get to try some winter squash soon. I'm registered dietitian Laura Jacob from Christie Clinic. Thanks for watching.